Good evening. This is Council Barr just checking in.
Thank you, Councillor Brown.
Good evening, Councillor Santos checking in.
Thank you, Councillor Santos.
Welcome everybody to the Planning and Development Committee meeting, Monday, February 12th. I will now begin with the roll call. Deputy Mayor Singh.
Present.
Councillor Santos.
Present.
Councillor Vincente.
Present.
Councillor Quarbrar.
Present.
Councillor Keenan.
Present.
Councillor Medeiros. Councillor Fortini. Councillor Tour.
Present.
Councillor Power. And Mayor Brown? Not present. We have quorum. I will start approval of the agenda. Members, you have before you the agenda as printed. Would you like to add, remove, change, delete anything on the agenda today? Seeing none. It's been moved by Councillor Vincente. I don't need a seconder. All in favor? That carries. Declarations of interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. Any members like to declare a conflict of interest on anything in the agenda today? Seeing none. Our consent motion. The items that are up for consent are 7.1 staff report, city initiated bylaw, right of entry for maintenance. No, it's not, because 5.4 is the public meeting. 7.2, application to amend the official plan and zoning bylaw, Glenn Schnarr and Associates, Sonial Clarence Inc., 75 Clarence Street, Ward 3, been held by Councillor Keenan. 9.1, illegal development and land use related to truck and trailer and container storage, held by Councillor Santos. 9.2, streamlining the administrative subdivision assumption process. Consent. Thank you to staff for that report. 11.1 is a correspondence from Tamara Chipperfield, Corporate Secretariat, Credit Valley Conservation, dated January 22nd, 2024, CVC, final report on the Conservation Authorities Act transition period. Consent. I don't have an 8.1, I don't think. I have mixed up my papers. I do have an 8.1, sorry. Brampton Heritage Board Summary of Recommendations, January 30th, 2024. Consent. Our next item is the statute, you need a motion on consent. Been moved by Deputy Mayor Singh. All in favor? That carries. Statutory public meeting reports. We have a statutory public meeting, a staff presentation, application to amend the zoning bylaw, Meridian Planning Consultants on behalf of Derlu Iman Institute, 8627 Mississauga Road, Ward 4. Is there anybody here tonight that would like to see a presentation on this staff report, this staff presentation, which is the zoning bylaw Meridian Planning Consultants on behalf of Darrell Iman Institute, 8627 Mississauga Road, Ward 4. I have to ask again, is there anybody in attendance tonight that would like to hear a presentation? This item is for 8627 Mississauga Road, Ward 4. Anybody online? Not seeing any. We have one correspondence on this one from Ronald Webb that also lives on Mississauga Road in Ward 4, near Lionhead. I'm trying to stall as much as possible, sir. Nobody would like to hear a presentation? That item is adjourned. Our next item is a staff presentation, application to amend the zoning bylaw and draft plan of subdivision, Royal Cliff Homes, Countryside Inc., Glenn Schnarr and Associates, 0 Countryside Drive, Ward 10. Is there anybody in attendance tonight that would like to hear a presentation on this item? Yes, thank you. Our other item is staff presentation, application to amend the zoning bylaw and for a draft plan of subdivision, MHBC Planning, on behalf of Bovaird West Holdings, 0 Lagerfeld Drive, Ward 6. Thank you. And our next statutory public meeting is a city-initiated bylaw for the right of entry for maintenance. It's a staff presentation, city-initiated bylaw, right of entry for maintenance citywide. Anybody in attendance that would like to hear the presentation on that? Thank you. So those will be held for presentation. We'll go back to our first staff presentation, application to amend the zoning bylaw and draft plan of subdivision Royal Cliff Homes, Countryside Inc., Glenn Schnarr and Associates Inc., 0 Countryside Drive, Ward 10. We have Samantha Della Peña. Welcome, Samantha. How are you? Good, good.
Good evening, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee, members of the public, and city colleagues. My name is Sam Della Peña, and I am the planner assigned to process and review the subject application. The purpose of this public meeting is to provide information to the public and seek feedback on the application filed by Glenn Schnarr and Associates, Inc. on behalf of Royal Cliff Homes, Countryside, Inc. Next slide, please. The subject property is located in Ward 10 with no municipal address. The site is located west of Clarkway Drive and south of Countryside Drive. Next slide, please. This map shows an overview of the subject site within the property and surrounding land uses. To the north, Countryside Drive, beyond which are agricultural uses and single detached residential dwellings. To the south, agricultural uses. To the east, agricultural uses. And to the west, agricultural uses and single detached residential dwellings. Next slide, please. This slide shows an aerial photo of the site. The site has access to Countryside Drive. Next slide, please. The following slide shows site visits conducted. Next slide, please. The applicant has submitted an application to amend the zoning bylaw and for a draft plan of subdivision to permit the site development of 10.58 hectares with a total of 205 residential units, consisting of 81 single detached dwelling units, 36 semi-detached units, 71 street townhouse units, and 17 dual frontage townhouse units. The proposal also includes a small portion of a future school block and a natural heritage system. Next slide, please. Prior to finalizing recommendations and advancing associated final report to council, this development application will be further evaluated for compliance with the Planning Act as amended, consistency with provincial policy statement, and conformity to the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe as amended, and conformity to the in effect Region of Peel official plan, the City of Brampton official plan, and its Highway 427 industrial secondary plan. Next slide, please. The subject site for the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is designated residential and open space in the City of Brampton's official plan, which permits a full range of dwelling types from single detached houses to high-rise apartments. The proposed development does not require an amendment to the official plan. Next slide, please. The lands are within the Highway 427 industrial secondary plan and are designated as low-density residential, medium-density residential, elementary school, and valley land. The proposed development falls within these uses, and an amendment to the secondary plan is therefore not required to permit the proposed development. Next slide, please. The lands are within the Highway 427, 47-1, and 47-2 block plan and are designated as low-density residential, medium-density residential, elementary school, and valley land. The proposed development falls within these uses, and an amendment to the block plan is therefore not required to permit the proposed development. Next slide, please. The lands are zoned agricultural and agricultural special section 1520. Permitted uses include agricultural uses, a single detached dwelling, and other accessory uses. An amendment to the zoning bylaw is therefore required to facilitate the proposed development, and as such, next slide, please. The applicant proposes to amend the zoning bylaw from the current agricultural and agricultural special section 1520 to residential single detached, residential semi-detached, residential townhouse, institutional, open space, and floodplain zones. Next slide, please. This shows the site plan of the proposal. At this time, preliminary issues and considerations that will need to be addressed include support for Housing Brampton and the city's comprehensive housing strategy and action plan, potential impacts to the existing community, opportunities to achieve a higher sustainability score from the current bronze score, and the spine servicing agreement for Block 47-2. These issues and others that will be raised will be addressed in a future recommendation report. Next slide, please. Staff is hosting a statutory public meeting this evening to share information of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment on the subject site and provide an opportunity for members of the public to express comments, perspectives, and opinions. Staff will continue to review the applicant's planning rationale and supporting plans, drawings, and technical comments, and staff will advance a final recommendation report for council decision in the future based on the details of the proposed development and the applicable planning laws and policies, while incorporating comments and considerations from community members, technical reviewers, and other stakeholders. Staff will also follow up with members of the public and other stakeholders who have spoken, written in, or advised of an interest in monitoring this proposal. Next slide, please. For more information on the development proposal, the applicant's submission materials, including architectural plans, drawings, and supporting studies, these are all publicly accessible through the city's Brand Plan online portal. Just type in the file number of the application in the required field, which in this case is file number OZS-2023-0023. And this brings up the file page where by clicking the File Info tab, you will be allowed to view all the drawings and documents associated with this development application. Next slide, please. This public meeting presentation will be available online as part of the Planning and Development Committee meeting shortly. The final recommendation report will be posted on the city's PDC meeting agenda in advance of the future meeting. For any questions or comments about this development application, please contact myself, my manager, or the applicant, Mark Condello, who is representing Glenn Schnarr & Associates, Inc. The corresponding contact info are shown on the screen above. Next slide, please. Thank you, and have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you, Samantha. So the staff presentation, application to amend the zoning bylaw and draft plan of subdivision, Royal Cliff Homes Countryside, Inc., Glenn Schnarr & Associates, 0 Countryside Drive, Ward 10. Is there anybody that would like to come down and ask any questions or make any comments of this application here today? Is my first request. Second time, is there anybody here that would like to come down, ask any questions on the application to amend the zoning bylaw, draft plan of subdivision, Royal Cliff Homes, Countryside, Glenn Schnarr & Associates, Inc., 0 Countryside Drive? Anybody in attendance like to come down asking questions? Seeing none, the item is received. Moved by Deputy Mayor Singh. All in favor? That carries. The next staff presentation, application to amend the zoning bylaw, draft plan of subdivision, MHBC Planning on behalf of Bovaird West Holdings, Inc., 0 Lagerfeld Drive, Ward 6. We have Arjun. Arjun, welcome. Good.
Good evening, Chair, Vice Chair, members of committee, members of public, and fellow city staff. My name is Arjun Singh, and I'm the planner assigned to process and review the subject application. The purpose of the public meeting is to provide information to the public and seek feedback on the application filed by MHBC on behalf of Bovaird West Holdings, Inc. Next slide, please. Subject property is located in Ward 6 at 0 Lagerfeld Drive in the northwest part of Brampton. The nearest major intersection is Bovaird Drive West and Credit View Road. Next slide, please. This slide shows an overview of the site. Surrounding land uses include, to the north, Lagerfeld Drive, beyond which is the Mount Pleasant Go and low-medium density residential. To the south is Bovaird Drive West, beyond which are existing low and medium density residential. To the east is vacant lands that are subject to an application for high density residential. To the west is Credit View Road, beyond which are vacant lands subject to an application for commercial uses. Next slide, please. This slide shows a further overview of the site and surrounding uses and developments. Next slide, please. Site visit was conducted on January 17th. Photos from the site visit are shown on screen. Next slide, please. The development application is proposing to permit a mixed-use development consisting of 5 buildings with 7 towers of heights ranging from 28 to 47 stories. Further details include 6 towers on 4 mixed-use podiums, which are Block A through C, 1 tower on a residential podium, which is Block D, a new north-south public road, a new east-west private road, and a privately owned public space, or POPS, is proposed in the center of this development. Next slide, please. This slide shows further details on the development application. This includes a total unit count of 2,801 units, total parking spaces of 2,204 spaces, a total bicycle parking of 200 2,145 spaces, a total POPs area of 2,626 square meters, a total FSI of 6.01, a total retail gross floor area of 3,445 square meters. Next slide, please. Prior to finalizing recommendations to council, this application will be further evaluated for consistency with the Planning Act, provincial policy statement, conformity with the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe, the Region of Peel official plan, the City of Brampton official plan, as well as the Fletcher's Meadows secondary plan. Next slide, please. The official plan designates this property for residential. The residential designations permit a full range of dwelling types ranging from single detached houses to high-rise apartments. Complementary uses shall be permitted, including schools, daycare centers, and the proposed uses fall within the residential designation. The property is also located within the boundaries of the Gateway Mobility Hub, Mount Pleasant Go major transit station area. As such, an amendment to the official plan is not required. Next slide, please. The subject lands are designated as town center and primary major transit station area on Schedule 1A of Brampton Plan. The lands are also designated as mixed use on Schedule 2 designations. Next slide, please. The subject site is located within the Fletcher's Meadows secondary plan. The current designation of the secondary plan is mixed use node and special policy area GO Transit mixed use node. Permitted uses shall include office, commercial, and high density residential subject to site specific review. An amendment to the secondary plan is not required, subject to Policy 6.3, which requires that the application meets the transit-oriented and pedestrian-friendly development principles in the secondary plan. Next slide, please. Subject lands are Zone Commercial 3, Special Section 3526. A zoning bylaw amendment is required to permit the proposed height and parking requirements. Next slide, please. The proposed official plan amendment will retain the zoning on the subject lands of Commercial 3, Special Section 3526, and amend the zone to include an increase in height and facilitate the site-specific parking requirements. Next slide, please. Key issues and considerations: potential shadowing and wind effects, appropriateness of the distribution of heights across the proposal, adequacy of pedestrian access to the proposed POP space to existing and planned developments, opportunities for reducing driveway encroachments into the POPs, noise considerations with proximity to the Mount Pleasant GO station, appropriate phasing of the development, potential traffic generated with the development being in proximity to the Mount Pleasant GO West parking lot, and appropriateness of the development standards within the proposed zoning bylaw amendment. Some considerations is that it's a large-scale mixed-use development adding to the city's housing stock, introduction of a park space into an existing built-up area, transit-supportive and active transportation supportive development. Next slide, please. The application was filed with the city and deemed complete on January 9th. The application was circulated to commenting departments and agencies. We are now at the public meeting stage. The next steps in this application are that staff will continue the review of the application, including reviewing comments from the public and technical comments, advance a final recommendation report to council for decision, and issues raised will be addressed in the future recommendation report. Staff will also contact and follow up with those residents who have spoken, written in, or advise of an interest in monitoring this proposal. Next slide, please. The development application can be accessed by the public through BramPlan Online. Through BramPlan Online, members of the public can click search for an application link, then type the file number in for the application in the required field, which in this case is OZS-2023-0039. This brings up the file page whereby clicking the File Info tab will allow for all drawings and documents associated with the development proposal to be reviewed. Next slide, please. The report associated with tonight's public meeting is available online. The presentation will be available online shortly. Once again, my name is Arjun Singh, and my contact information is posted on the screen, along with the contact information of the applicant, Oz Kamal, from MHBC Planning, who is representing the landowner. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact myself, my manager, or the applicant. Thank you kindly and have a great evening.
Thanks, Arjun. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have the application to amend the zoning bylaw draft plan of subdivision MHBC Planning on behalf of Bavard West Holdings, 0 Lagerfeld Drive. Is there anybody here that would like to ask any questions? Come down, please. We're going to ask you to state your name, and then we're going to get a book over there that you have to write your name in the book before or after. Sylvia, go ahead.
Hello, my name is Sylvia Roberts. Can you go back to the slide showing how many units were in this? So one of the things and how we calculate our transportation, what it's going to generate, is we use something called the Transportation Tomorrow Survey. So every 5 years or so, it's the city, along with a number of other municipalities, the Metrolinx, and the province get together, fund a project to survey a huge number of people to ask how they get around. And that's a very useful piece of information. The issue here is for our developments, as of right now, we require the applicant to use the counts for the areas around it. And the problem with this development is we are telling them to use counts to assume what the distribution of auto trips and pedestrian cycling and all that stuff based on people who live in single detached houses with 2 or more parking spaces. The reason this is a problem is this has less than 1 parking space per unit. And so just by that, it's very obvious you're going to have fewer people driving. The applicant, in their transportation impact study, actually did do traffic counts of several more comparable buildings. One of them is 100 John Street downtown. And then they also surveyed one in Port Credit, Mississauga, and then there's a third one in Burlington. And so they were able to come up with much better numbers because they went to an actual building that's much more appropriate to the style of this building. And it's much more likely closer to our estimations of what the modal split's going to be. So the problem there is, in the John Street building, peak hour, they're seeing 0.2 pedestrian/transit trips per unit. And in the one in Mississauga, it's 0.3. So the problem we have here is they're assuming, okay, it's going to be like 225 pedestrian and transit trips, but if we use them based on the single detached houses in the area. But if you look at comparable buildings and you plug those numbers into how many units, and you actually get more like 1,000 trips in the peak hour. 225 and 1,000 are somewhat different numbers. And so my concern is we're dramatically underestimating the amount of pedestrians and transit users. And in Brampton, because we have good transit, but also it's not very walkable. So we'll have cases where you're 400 meters from a bus that runs every 8 minutes in rush hour, but it's also a 1.5 kilometer walk to the nearest store. When you look at the pedestrian and transit trip breakdown, it's just overwhelmingly in terms of transit. There's just not a huge amount of commercial stuff for here compared to much more urban places. And I understand the city's making a lot of effort for that. But this means we are going to see a huge amount of transit trips. And this right here, for example, you're going to need something like a Beauvais BRT in order to service this kind of development. And I know the planning department has looked at that, and there's actually funding in the budget to start thinking about that, and people on council have been in favor of a Beauvais BRT and considering it. But so I'm not blaming staff. They're just following the existing rules and their development application planners, so they're processing according to the existing rules. I'm not blaming the applicant because they followed the rules they were told to do. But the rules that we're having everyone follow, they're simply bad. It makes no sense to assume that a house that has 2 or even 4 parking spaces is going to give you a good estimation of our car trips or transit trips as a unit which has no parking space. We have to look at this in reviewing it for the overall applications for the rest of this development of this area, Heritage Heights, and then also in our intensification areas. Thank you. That's my delegation.
Thank you. Next.
Yes, hi. My name is Matthew Marcapelli. I'm a resident of the Mount Pleasant Village area there. And And anyway, this is my first time ever
No
coming
problem.
down to the council, so
Take your time.
I have no idea about procedures and all
No
that. But-
worries. Take your time, but speak up.
Okay, just a couple days ago, as I was Googling, I just happened to notice this picture about these skyscrapers, and it says, whoa, it's coming like a few blocks away from me. I said, well, I never heard anything about it all of a sudden. Like, okay, I said, how, I'd like to find out a little bit more about it. And, I mean, usually when something big like this is going on, I mean, there's a lot of community consultations and, a lot of advance notices for all the residents to get information about. But this is just like, well, I just happened to notice in Googling, I don't even get Brampton Guardian at home, at my house. They don't even deliver it there anymore. They used to get it free, but don't even get that anymore. So there's not much way for residents in Brampton to really get much information from the city of Brampton. Like, nobody's gonna go every day to the Brampton website and check in to see what's going on in Brampton. Like, we need to, like, just information from you guys to the residents about anything happening in your neighborhood.
Can we
'Cause
stop the
I
time
remember
for
a few
1
years.
second? Let me, I don't want you to waste your time
Yeah.
on that, and I'll speak to that afterwards.
Yeah.
But if you can maybe just talk to the application that's
Well,
in front of you,
this-
and then, but I will speak to
Yeah.
how we get information out after your delegation, okay?
Right, okay.
All right.
This is the big thing, because when I saw this, I said, this looks like downtown Toronto. And our community is just a small community, like residential neighborhood. And there's a small, tiny library there. That's the only access we have to any kind of, Brampton City services. There's nothing else around there, other than the GO station. And I can't even go to the library if I want to go and find a parking space to go in because the people that take the GO train, they use all the parking spaces available. So as it is right now, there's no infrastructure from the city to support what's going on right now itself. And then I said, this coming here in our neighborhood, I said, where's all these people gonna go? The Bovair Drive is horrible. It's a dangerous road. And it takes you forever to go anywhere on Bovair Drive because it's filled with cars. And then now, if you add this on top of this, I don't know what's gonna happen in that area. It's like, you're not even gonna know what's gonna happen there in the future. Because this something like hasn't even happened in Brampton. There's nothing like this in Brampton. There isn't even any skyscrapers in downtown. So why are you even considering, why does somebody want to put a skyscrapers up there in the residential neighborhood? But I'd like to see like some notices to the neighborhood and meetings in our area so that we can get information about this. Because I had more than a month's advance notice from the city when they were gonna do sewer line repairs on a street in our neighborhood. And this, nothing. That's what I'd like to hear.
Okay, so I'll speak to the notices. So first I'll start with this. It's everybody's right to put forward an application into the city of Brampton. And this is the very beginning of that stage, right? This application is here tonight, not for us, not for the city, it's for the public. So we send out, the Planning Act says 140 meters, 120 around the subdivision. We send out notices to every house. We've upped that to 240 to try and get more notices out into the community. But you're not the first person to come here to say, I didn't receive anything, and you won't be the last. Brampton Guardian's gone. It's extremely difficult for us to get the information out to the public, especially on things like this. So it really takes either our community newsletters, our social media, being your representative, and Councillor Quabrar as well. But back to this being the very first part of the application process. So no decisions here tonight. This is an application that's come here and been presented to the public, and then staff will then take all of the information all of the comments from the residents. If any residents would like to make other comments about this application, they can send it into into staff, and staff will report back on those comments and all of the studies that the applicant needs to do. Alan, do you want to take over?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Maybe I'll just also reference that there is signage on each of the subject properties that we provide as well, which identify the nature of the application, the file number, and now, because there is no Granton Guardian, we are referencing the date of the public meeting. So tonight's public meeting would have been referenced on the sign as well. And you're right, Chair, exactly that. Staff will consider all of the comments received, not only at the public meetings as tonight, but as we're processing the applications, residents, anyone can get in touch with staff to voice concerns, share input. All of that will be received and spoken to within the future recommendation report.
So there's time to get your comments in. There's time to talk to your neighbors, to get their comments in as well. Reach out to your area councilors, and to staff as well. Okay? Thank you for your delegation. Is there anybody else that would like to come down and delegate on this item? 6.1. Oh, does the planner want to provide comments? You're on as a delegation. You can if you want. It's your right.
I'm here.
Okay.
We actually have a presentation.
Okay.
Maybe we can just run through that, but I'll be brief.
No problem. You have 5 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Oz Kamal. I'm a partner at MHBC Planning, and tonight I'm here on behalf of Boulevard West Holdings, and we will be presenting an overview of the proposed mixed-use development of the lands located at the northeast corner of Boulevard Drive and Credit View Road. I'm joined here tonight by representatives of the ownership group as well as members of our consulting team to assist in answering any questions that may arise. I know city staff have gone through a lot of the location and things of that nature, so maybe next slide, please. I'm just going to probably jump ahead a couple slides. Next slide, please. This is a slide showing you area developments currently happening. You can see our site highlighted in red. There's 5 different sites located there, and they range in different heights and densities from 14 to 34 stories currently in either approvals or in under construction. Next slide, please. This was already covered. Next slide, please. That was covered as well. Next slide, please. Thank you. The overall structure of the development has been designed in a block pattern with an internal street network to promote connectivity. A total of 4 blocks are proposed on the site plan. The lands are to be divided into 3 mixed-use blocks, blocks A, B, and C, and 1 residential block, block D. All 4 blocks are proposed to provide for residential towers, with the towers of blocks A to C being located on top of a mixed-use podium. The mixed-use podiums have been located and designed to frame their respective street frontages, providing for active uses at grade. Next slide, please. In the municipal road, in terms of the public road, actually next slide, please. There we go. And there's a new municipal road proposed bisecting the site, connecting Lagerfeld Drive to the north with Boulevard Drive West to the south. It's currently identified as Street A. It's a public right-of-way, and it's intended to be dedicated to the city with a right-of-way cross-section of approximately 20 meters. That'll consist of driving lanes, green boulevards, and pedestrian walkways. Next slide, please. In addition to the public road, there's also a private road running east-west, connecting the subject lines from Credit View right through, currently identified as Street B. The private right-of-way is intended to have a 15-meter cross-section and will consist of, again, driving lanes, green boulevards, and pedestrian walkways. Next slide, please. In terms of the heights, so the heights of the proposed towers range from 28 stories to 47 stories, but it's important to note that in effect today with the current zoning, we're allowed to do 25 stories. That was established back in 2017 through the zoning bylaw. So we're seeking an increase in the height in this application. So the proposed massing and height strategy is intended to create a varied and dynamic skyline while accentuating the gateway features of the site. The residential floors are located above the podiums and are all stepped back. And in order to ensure adequate sunlight within the center of the site, the spacing between the towers is kept at a minimum 25 meters. The proposal includes rooftop amenity areas, which will create specific opportunities for dining functions and various interior programming. Next slide, please. I'm going to talk about the open space area. So a total of 2,626 square meters of open space is proposed throughout the blocks. This space will be provided in the form of 2 publicly accessible private spaces identified as POPs. The 2 POPs are located internal to the site and are intended to offer strong public amenity in the higher trafficked residential area. Next slide, please. On the slide on your right there, so what you're seeing there is the POP space on the west side, so that's POPs A. That has an area of approximately 1,835 square meters with a focus on providing accessible green space features, and these features will include mounted landscape areas, a kids' play area, shade structures, open lawn, and seating. Next slide, please. POPs B is on the east side. It's an area of approximately 791 square meters and has a focus on hardscaped features. It's intended to have a dog off-leash area and shade structures which can be accessed in all seasons. Next slide, please. In terms of the gateway, the corner of Beauverd and Credit View provides for a great opportunity to create a special gateway feature. As per the Mount Pleasant block plan, an architectural facade treatment oriented to the corner of Beauverd Drive and Credit View will further reinforce the subject lands as a gateway to the Mount Pleasant community. Envisioning an architectural canopy that can double as public art are examples shown on this slide. Next slide, please. Thank you. 1 second.
Thank you very much. As there's nobody else that would like to have any questions or comments, I will have Councillor Brar move the staff presentation, application to amend the zoning bylaw in for a draft plan of subdivision MHBC planning on behalf of Beauverd West Holdings, Inc., 0 Lagerfeld Drive, Ward 6, and the public delegations for item 5.3. All in favor? That carries. Our next item is a staff presentation, city-initiated bylaw, right of entry for maintenance. Noel?
Through the chair, thank you and good evening. My name is Noel Kibakub, and I'm the planner assigned to analyzing the opportunities of a new citywide bylaw, the right of entry for maintenance bylaw. The purpose of this public meeting is to provide information to the public and the committee and seek feedback on the potential bylaw. Next slide, please. For some context, this work is the result of a year-long review of our development application processes and how we can make improvements to how we do business. Next slide, please. One recommendation of this review was to reduce red tape by eliminating the need to create maintenance easements. A maintenance easement, for example, would allow a neighbor to use a portion of my property to repair or maintain their own home, such as placing a ladder on my property to repair a window. A landowner can use the application types seen on the screen to create a maintenance easement. Next slide, please. To help visualize this are examples which show a bird's eye view of 2 of these application types. Both applications create new residential lots. However, the image on the bottom left shows that the exemption specifically creates a maintenance easement as indicated by this smaller rectangle. If I owned that property, my neighbor to the left would be allowed to access and use my part or that part of the land to do repairs on their own home. Next slide, please. Currently, a landowner cannot simply access the neighboring property to do maintenance work. The only legal way to do so would be receiving consent through a registered easement or by obtaining a court order. Next slide, please. This slide shows generally how long one of these applications can take, on average about 6 weeks, but longer depending on the application type. This process places a variety of financial and time-consuming burdens on landowners and applicants. This process could also delay a new homeowner from gaining access to their newly purchased home. Next slide, please. going back. Sorry. Our desire is to reduce red tape and lift any financial and time-consuming burdens felt by landowners and applicants by enacting a new right of entry bylaw. Next slide, please. It is the Municipal Act that allows the municipality to enact this right of entry bylaw. Next slide, please. The Act provides conditions that must be upheld should a municipality enact this bylaw. The first being a landowner, resident, or an employee would be able to access the adjoining property. 2, proper identification must be provided if requested. 3, entry into a building is not permitted. 4, reasonable notice must be provided prior to any work being done. And 5, lands being accessed must be left in its original condition. Restoration and compensation shall be provided if this condition is not met. We want to emphasize that this bylaw is for routine maintenance and not intended for large projects, so situations where damages occur should be rare. However, this condition and various others would be placed in a future bylaw. Next slide, please. We have found 7 local municipalities that have enacted similar bylaws. Based on the review, we found that some municipalities created a new permit requirement, whereas some enabled it as of right. We want to acknowledge that creating a new permit system would not be ideal and could actually create more work for the landowner and the city. I will also note that some of these bylaws are very extensive and often provide many other conditions that must be met, and the intent would be to draft Brampton's in a similar way. Next slide, please. Here are some examples to further illustrate how this bylaw would function in practice. The example on the left illustrates that property 1 could access the backyard of property 2 if, for example, they needed to repair a damaged fence and they needed to access the backyard of property 2 to do so. The example on the right illustrates that property 1 can access property 2 if they needed to place a ladder on property 2 to maintain the side of the building. I will also note that access will not be permitted in the primary dwelling, the shed, the deck, or any other structures on site. Next slide, please. The city has taken measures to share this information with the general public as well as the committee. If the committee so chooses, next steps would be to collect and review public, technical, and any other comments, and then finally provide a recommendation report which will be brought forward with the final draft of the right of entry bylaw for consideration by the committee. This public meeting is different than most in that this proposal is not under the Planning Act and is not required by law for us to do. However, we thought it would be best to inform the public and the committee and then receive feedback. We will also note that this report is different from the previous applications as any appeal rights to the Ontario Land Tribunal do not apply here. Next slide, please. The information report, presentation, and municipal review can be found online at brampton.ca on the meetings and agendas page. And once again, I am Noel Kubicub, and my contact information is before you should any questions, comments, or concerns come up as a result of this public meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Noel. Anybody here that would like to come down, ask any questions of the presentation, city-initiated bylaw, right of entry for maintenance? Please state your name for the record.
Hello, my name is Sylvia Roberts, and I was curious about what the differences would be between routine maintenance and what might be termed exigent circumstances. So sometimes it's like, okay, my roof's 15 years old, I need to get a roofer to go up, look at it, and probably need to replace and stuff. And so in that time, I can probably give my neighbor a reasonable amount of notice. And there's other times of, there was a strong windstorm and it sounded like something hit my roof. And the rain forecast says, we've got heavy rains coming in like 3 days, in which case there isn't necessarily time to give any kind of meaningful notice, because if the roof has been damaged, there could be, if failure to immediately repair it could cause significant water damage, causing potentially structurally compromising the building if rain gets in and starts getting to the attic and causing all sorts of stuff. So I was curious about what steps the city's taken care of to understand that if it's routine stuff, notice should be provided to your neighbor to at least give them a heads up. But in some cases like that, there may not be other stuff. Or other than like a windstorm, your kids are playing ball and the ball hits the window and it breaks the window. And it's a normal February where it's not potentially 10 degrees above freezing and it's actually potentially more like getting down to -8, in which case there's a dramatic effect to the building occupants if that is not repaired immediately. So I don't know, could the planner shed some light on that?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Staff will take the comments under advisement. We'll consider those scenarios in relation to really how the proposed implementing changes would result in those regards, and we'll be reporting back through to committee at a later point in time with respect to those scenarios and further comments as well that we've received from the public.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else who would like to ask any questions? Councillor Vincente.
Thank you, Mr. Questions or clarification?
Yes.
Do we often have situations where neighbors dispute being able to place a ladder on one side of the property line versus the other to do maintenance and repairs? Is it often that we deal with issues like this?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I am not familiar with issues that have occurred over the years. It could be that there are some instances of the sort that staff will consult with our friends in enforcement about to understand a little further, but I am not aware of really issues that there have been of that sort in some regular accessing of an adjacent site's portion of the property to complete some maintenance to somebody's own home.
Okay. And if this goes ahead in the future through you, Chair, would that release the person who needs to do the maintenance from just the obligation to provide some notice, or do they still have to provide notice?
Through the chair, based on the other municipalities' requirements, they still would be required to provide notice. Again, this doesn't necessarily prohibit, handshake agreements or things of that nature, so that would still be permissible. And in other municipal bylaws, they also clearly state that other civil liberties would be maintained. So if other civil issues come up, they could still file through the civil courts for any other issues. But the notice would still be needed to provide it, yes.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. No further questions.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor, the item is actually on the report, is a staff recommendation on the report today. Would you like to bring that forward and deal with it now? We can. Okay, so I'll bring forward staff report, city-initiated bylaw right of entry for maintenance. I'm going to open it up to any questions of any members. No questions? Councillor Vincente, you'll move that? Been moved by Councillor Vincente, item 7.1 and item 5.4, the staff presentation, city initiated bylaw right of entry for maintenance. All in favor? Carries. Our next item is item held by Councillor Keenan, staff report application to amend the official plan and zoning bylaw Glen Schnarr and Associates, Sonail Clarence Inc., 75 Clarence Street, Ward 3. Councillor Keenan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let me start off, thanks staff. This slightly predates me for the process, as I first heard about this when I was door knocking, meeting with residents and hearing their concerns first and foremost. The more I dove into it and spoke to the residents, I seen obviously what their concerns are. The more I drive down Clarence every day, I really get to see what the concerns are. And I look at this to say I am pro-development. I know we have our housing targets, and I know we need to hit them in the appropriate ways, and we're doing that. But I'm always going to stick true to making sure that what is being put into existing neighborhoods really fits in. It really meets those needs. And on this one, I don't see it. I feel that when we look at Clarence, we're lacking that infrastructure that would hold this building. The road network that's there, tricky to get through. I don't think I've been down Clarence without being in traffic. And I look at the proximity of the residents and what's around. And when I look at putting a building for intensification in a neighborhood, I look at it, is that going to streamline other developments that we may need? So you have to take that first step to do that. I don't see that on Clarence. when I look at projects that have already been approved on Clarence, we still are yet to see it come, but there's upwards of 100 townhouses coming at the other corner of Clarence, which is going to just create more of these issues for here. So with that being said, I'm not going to be in favor of the staff recommendation on this one. And I'm going to ask that my colleagues do the same, because I just don't feel that this is the appropriate project for this area. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Are there any other members that would like to speak on the application? You have a motion moved by Councillor Keenan to refuse the application based off of some of the comments. All for Councillor Keenan's motion to refuse the application. We have support. So the application had been turned down. Councillor Keenan, you'll speak more about it when the minutes come to council.
Sorry, through the chair. We'll need the reasons for the public notice. On Wednesday? Okay.
The minutes of the Heritage were in consent. We now go to item 9.1, staff report, illegal development and land use related to truck, trailer, and container storage that was held by Councillor Santos. Councillor Santos.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. If staff can just go to page number 3 of the report, please. There's just a chart that I wanted to point out. Perfect. Yep, right there. So over a period of 1 year, we've seen an increase of a significant increase of 7, and in the next line there, 8 times more in terms of cases under investigation. And then if you go to page number 6, Madam Clerk, particularly that paragraph right there regarding the proactive property standards pilot, second unit task force, the RRL pilot, set property standard investigations, and now this new task force, which is going to be up for 12 months. I have some issues that relate to making sure that we have enough resources to actually be successful with this task force, among the other things related to bylaw. And I know that we are looking at an operational review, but because many of these things are needing to happen soon, and I understand that bylaw enforcement is also conducting interviews at this time because of the budget increase we've given for more bylaw officer staff. There might be an opportunity for us, given that this is a new task force that is coming forward, to actually hire more bylaw officers to support this work, either temporarily or permanently, depending on how that parallel operational review comes back. So I'm going to actually refer this report, because it needs to be ratified at council on February 28th anyway. I'd like to refer this report to committee of council on February 21st for us to have a more thorough conversation about it. And we can talk more about it at that time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Santos. Members of council, you have a referral. Anybody speaking to the referral? Seeing none, it's been moved by Councillor Santos. Refer this to the next committee of council, which the date would be February 21st. All in favor? Carried. 11.2 was received at item 5.1, the correspondence, I believe. Councillor question period. Any members of council wish to ask any questions on any of the items that we dealt with today? Seeing absolutely none. Public question period. Any members of the public that would like to come down and ask any questions today. Please line up in an orderly line. Anybody online? No. Go ahead, Sylvia. State your name for the record.
All right. Hello, my name is Sylvia Roberts. I'm a resident of Ward 3, and I very much remember the very strange project on Clarence, which I was like, why here? But, so my question, so part of it also has to do with consultation. So I'm a parishioner at St. Mary's, and that our territorial parish includes this area, and I find that no one seemed to find out anything from the city. In the recent census, 90% of people in the city of Brampton are religious, which is vastly higher than other places. Does the city do any kind of outreach to houses of worship? Like, hey, there's projects going on in this area. St. Mary's, for example, has 4,000 registered parishioners, and if you give them a heads up about some of the stuff there, that could be a useful way to get in touch with the community. So does the planning department do any outreach to religious communities? Because with the Guardian gone, how are we supposed to find out what's going on?
Alan?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, I can speak to development applications in particular. And as it relates to development applications, we do have to ensure compliance with the legislation, the Planning Act in particular. There's Places to Grow Act as well. There's provincial policy statements. Those documents do not identify really any correspondence or engagement beyond the mailings of 120 meters from a subject property. As we know, and as you referenced earlier, Chair, we do double that with mailings going to landowners around the radius from a site, so doubling the Planning Act requirements. We also do provide signage on the subject property, as noted previously as well, and we do put notice within the on the web, so by way of the city's website. We currently also do utilize the Brampton Guardian and their web services, but there isn't any particular, strategy that we have as far as reaching out beyond that and communicating with places of worship and such. I can't speak to other ways in which the planning department, perhaps through city initiatives and policy matters, perhaps reach out, but as it relates to development applications, we employ those engagement sort of strategies.
The answer is no, they don't.
We'll
Okay.
continue to monitor, we continue to push. The world's working against us and trying to get information out, and the cost of trying to get information out is escalating every day, but we'll continue to try and see whatever their avenues there are to be able to get that information out. Thanks, Sue. Any other questions on any of the items? Come on down. I'll ask you to state your name for the record and then write your name in the book after. Coming up together?
Yeah, we can.
Wow.
There's actually three of us. We're neighbors from the,
Come one step closer.
we're neighbors from the Clarence Stearns, Center Street proposal for that, build the building behind us.
Can you state your
And,
name?
we are very pleased to hear what you had to say, Dennis. My name?
Yeah.
Oh, Christine Kentner.
Okay, thanks.
And I'm Shirley Cook.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
So I just wanted to confirm with you, Dennis, that what I heard is that this is a no-go.
So what has been moved today by committee is a refusal of the application. That now has to go to council to be ratified. At that time, the council will put forward a motion if supported as a rationale as to why it's being refused. So it's a step process, but you have the majority of members that sit on council also here that supported Councillor Keenan.
And you still have the rationale that we submitted before as to what we felt were the concerns and the 27 pages of signatures from the neighborhood. And that still stands. In fact, it'd be even more now if we went out. So I just wanted to let you know that we're happy so far of what we heard tonight. And appreciate that, Dennis.
Thank you for your delegations.
Thank you. Yeah, we just wanted to know if this was another step or if this
Yeah, so not the final.
Right.
This is planning committee. These recommendations go to council for the final.
Okay,
Okay?
yeah, well, delighted to hear it.
That's nice to hear, and if it doesn't go well, you'll see us again.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh is right.
Thank you for coming. Anybody else like to ask any questions today on anything that was on the agenda? Any members of the public? Anybody online? Nobody? Okay. We have no closed session. We have adjournment. It's been moved by Councillor Power that we adjourn today, and our next regular scheduled meeting is Monday, March 18th, 2024 at 1:00 p.m. or at the call of the chair. All in favor? Carries. Have a great night, everybody.